diminish the world population. And the elite, if I can use that word, which steers the world, and it's not the governments. Governments are errand boys for the elite. So the elite says that, oh, our planet is overpopulated and it needs reduction of the population dramatically, even by about 5 billion, when we are 6.9 billion today. So that, in my mind, is not true. The truth, in my mind, is that they are extremely afraid of the middle classes, which are increasing in numbers, and the middle class is a threat to the elite, not the working class. They call them, well, all of us, they call them cattle. You know, we normal people are cattle for them. And the working class would not start a revolution, but the middle class could, and that's why they need to diminish as much as possible. And it's done, you know, so that people don't realize, like the newest thing is now the swine flu vaccinations, which are toxic and which could kill a lot of people if they take them. And in the States, I just heard that, like in Massachusetts, it's going to be compulsory. Of course, in many other civilized nations, it's never compulsory. Finland made a change in laws, and I think they were very smart. They decided that the swine flu virus is not anymore listed in the list of contaminated dangerous diseases, and when it's not in that list, of course, nobody can force you to take a vaccination. Also here in Norway, I just read that the Folk Institute's director said that no, we have never even considered compulsory vaccination, but U.S. has other kinds of thoughts, and I'm very, very sorry for the American people who have to go through this, because it's going to be a catastrophe.
And I say this all the time, and even in my circle of friends and family. And that's why I have a show, because this way I can actually speak the truth. But when you talk about global warming, which is to me a ploy to tax and control the world, when I tell people that other planets are getting warmer, and if there's supposedly no inhabitants in other planets, then why are they getting warmer? Second, swine flu. I've been covering swine flu ever since the alleged first case in Veracruz, Mexico. And it's just a ploy. When I tell people that in 1976 they tried it in the United States and it failed, and many people died of Guillain-Barré, they still don't believe it. And now the World Health Organization has it to level 6, which is the pandemic level, when only about 1,000 people worldwide have died. And in the United States alone, last year, 33,000 people died of the regular influenza. So explain to me, how is it that we are to believe that there's a level 10, but not that many people are dying?
Well, unfortunately, WHO, like UN and NATO, are under control of whatever name you use. Some people use Illuminati, some say organization, some say the New World Order, whatever it is.
Yes.
In my mind, I have found out that the most of those people who are governing this planet, they are Zionists, and they want to have Jerusalem as the biggest city, or the most important city, the capital of the planet.
Of the
maybe
world,
they
right.
succeed, maybe they don't. I don't know. But anyway, WHO is a corrupt organization. I have myself been representative of Finland there in a couple of years for tropical medicine, and then I was sitting for months in every single meeting they ever had. I saw how they voted. For instance, I was asked by my government to say that Finland was interested to take part in a committee which was dealing with research of tropical medicine. And that was a surprise, because they had, I understood, from beforehand decided that France is going to go into that committee. But I had to, raise my hand and say that the government of Finland is asking for a place. So they had to vote. And I happened to be 1 meter from the voting when they put every country's name in a little piece of paper. And then one of those little pieces of paper was turned into a triangle. I saw it clearly. And the man who took the vote, the piece of paper, was, clearly showed that take this one, which is, in a triangle. He took it, and that was France. So, and then when Dr. Mysle was, he was Danish doctor, who was chief of WHO at that time, in the 70s. So he had been serving his fifth 5-year term, but he wanted to have 2 more years. And then a Japanese candidate came up and wanted, the 5-year term. So they were, those two were against each other. And what happened with the voting? Before the voting, the Japanese went around and offered, and this is from diplomatic circles because my husband was a UN diplomat, and they talk, as you know, with each other.
Sure.
So especially third world countries and their ambassadors, representatives to WHO, were offered a Japanese new car. Everybody gets a Japanese new car if you vote for the Japanese. And the Japanese candidate won. So, I don't have big respect for the things they do, but I understand now that they are under New World Order control and they get an order and they have to obey. And that is very, very sad that some people from outside can steer big organizations who originally were created to be very good and think of the health of the whole planet and all the people.
And of course, and no pun intended, but Big Pharma wants a big financial shot in the arm. They're behind this, I presume.
Absolutely. It's a billion dollar business, of course.
Now, espionage and assassinations against your will are the 2 primordial purposes of mind control. Do you think presidential assassination, let's say President John F. Kennedy, his brother, the Pope, President Reagan, to name a few, were these assassins victims of mind control?
I would think so. At least Sirhan was, I've read a lot of papers about him and his programming.
Yes.
And it was interesting that he said after he had fired, he said, "Did I do it?"
Didn't remember.
So it was clear to me after reading what had happened that he was totally mind controlled. And then when he was also killed, not to be able to talk. So, that shows something.
That usually happens.
It's very sad. It's the same thing that happens with the school shootings and the big store shootings when a young man usually just starts killing everybody who happens to be around and then kills himself. Now, in my mind, they are all mind control victims, those who shoot. And of course, their victims are also victims. And they always pick out young men who maybe have psychological problems before, and then they start beaming the frequency of hate. And when the frequency of hate is beamed at you for months or a couple of years even, there's nothing you can resist. You have to be a robot and you have to kill. And when you kill yourself, then they can't, ask questions about you. That's the Delta programming in the whole thing. It's very sad. It's very sad.
I want to speak of Project Delta in a few minutes, but I wanted to ask you, mind control is used to manipulate the opinions of individuals, but can it also be accomplished in a mass scale? And if so, how?
Oh, yeah, of course. It's just a frequency that they send. Now, in the last, I would say around 20 years, at least in Europe, I don't know in the States so much, but at least in Europe, they have changed the street lamps all over. They have changed them in old people's homes, at the yards. They have changed them at schoolyards. They have changed them at daycare centers for children, and they are able to send steer from remotely different frequencies. And if people would just look at the lamps, they would start thinking, why do they look different? And they are different than before. So they send a different frequency, and all those people who are around that area are affected. And the worst thing is, of course, they can do it through satellites, and there's nothing you can do to sort of protect yourself against satellites, right? How could we do that? In no way a normal person or a group of persons.
I have and will do shows on electronics, chemtrails. We'll do one on HAARP, chemicals. But I haven't heard one person put all these together. chemtrails, HAARP chemicals to produce mind control. How do these work together? This is basically psychological warfare, isn't it?
Of course it is. And we have chemtrails here in Norway very, very often. Chemtrails, of course, are often put into military planes or even passenger planes. I've seen a Lufthansa plane, a picture, which was distributing the white streaks, which is in powder form. They have titanium, aluminium, magnesium, etc. in this powder form. And since it's metal originally in powder, we breathe it in, and that way we can also be microchipped.
Oh, you're talking about chemtrails.
Chemtrails, yeah.
Yes.
Chemtrails from the skies.
Operation Cloverleaf.
When you're microchipped, then you are mind controlled.
Right.
So chemical trails can be adding to the mind control of the general population without their knowledge at all. And then that's one of the reasons why diseases like bronchitis, asthma, etc. have really increased, because you breathe it in. And people have no idea. Sometimes they look, oh, aren't they nice figures there, a figure X or something. And when I asked an expert, why are they always often in an X form, which they put the white strips in? So the answer was that so we can, through satellite pictures, see which areas are contaminated. So there's really a plan there.
Last week we had a show on chemtrails. We had somebody who really got into the what, who, when, etc. of the chemtrails. And I mentioned to him that a lot of people these days, you can find them in a comatose, an indifferent way. When they're driving, they feel that their mind is foggy, not as before. A lot of multiple sclerosis, a lot of Alzheimer's, dementia, and
right.
Aluminum causes all that, right?
Yeah, right. Correct. It's done deliberately to destroy the population of the world, to get more money for Big Pharma, because when you're sick, of course, you need medicines and you need doctors, and so Big Pharma gets the money.
Right.
And then, of course, when it gets bad enough, you die. So the whole plan is to diminish the population with chemical means like chemtrails, with electronic means, electromagnetic weapons, non-lethal weapons, and then psychological warfare, which causes stress and ill feelings to people, so that they get stressed and then they get tired and maybe commit suicide or whatever. It's a plan of the devil's, I think, and people don't know about it. They just suffer and die, and they should know about it.
As Henry Kissinger says, we're just simply useless eaters or useless containers.
Exactly. Yeah, we're cattle.
The powers that be sometimes don't lie about the fact they are using mind control during conflict areas, wars, and call it non-lethal weapons. But are they really non-lethal?
No, they're lethal. But they can be used as non-lethal. Tasers like that, when they can shoot at you, and or pepper sprays and things like that, and you stop your attack, or there's a crowd dispersing or something like that. But then if you put the hard frequency on, then of course they're lethal. That's what happened according to the Non-Lethal Weapons Conference in New York once, when they were shooting with a taser at some, I think he was a man who was kind of a clochard sleeping out. And the dose was too high, and he died. But then, according to this lecture, the policeman who was in charge of this took it so hardly that in 2 weeks he committed suicide himself. So they are lethal weapons.
If you have a lifetime friend who you trust with your life, perhaps a loved one, can that person be mind controlled to turn against you?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what they use. They use the person who you trust. Your best friend is always in the list for recruitment. It can be your wife, your husband, your child, whoever. Just like in the Manchurian Candidate. Meryl Streep was the mother of the young man whom she wanted to be president of the U.S. So
yes.
So she, so it was the mother programming. It's always somebody close to you, from your family or your best friend. And that's the devilish plan, because people can't believe that somebody who's been your best friend for years and decades could turn against you.